The film begins with a sniper named Doris hiding among the trees, ready to carry out an assassination mission. She has spent several days in her position, waiting for the moment when her target's private plane will land. When the time comes, she picks up her rifle, aims at the target from a great distance, and eliminates him instantly, successfully completing her mission. At the same time, we are introduced to another sniper named Levi, who has been retired for 4 years and has not participated in any missions since then. In a peaceful scene, he walks out at dawn, sits by the seaside, and watches the sunrise while writing poetry in his notebook. He appears lonely, as there is no one in his life to share his time or read his poems. Levi receives a summons from a US military camp. He goes there and meets a high-ranking officer named Bars, who acknowledges that he has been retired for 4 years, but also knows that he was among the elite and successfully carried out many missions. She tells him that she is aware of his last psychological evaluation before retirement, which deemed him unfit for service. She asks why he never challenged that evaluation or sought another psychologist's opinion. Levi replies that he found no sufficient reason to return to work as a sniper. Bars then informs him that she is assigning him a special mission that will require him to spend a long time in isolation, which might suit him since he is single and has no close relationships. Meanwhile, Doris is in Lithuania, visiting her father, who is sitting by her mother's grave in the cemetery. She tells him that she feels guilty about her last assassination, but he reassures her that her target was a war criminal and that she should not feel remorse. Doris informs him that the Russian intelligence has assigned her a new mission that will require her to be away for a long time. She does not know all the details, but she has already accepted it. Her father then reveals that he has been diagnosed with a terminal illness and does not have much time left. However, he accepts his fate peacefully, seeing death as a relief. He advises her to complete her mission without grieving for him, as he will be buried next to her mother and will rest in peace. He also asks her to make this her last mission and to seek a quiet life afterward. Doris promises to do so. We then move to December, where Levi is on a military plane heading to his new assignment. He does not even know the name of the country he is flying over or the exact details of his mission. He parachutes from the plane and lands in a foggy forest, then continues walking until he reaches a canyon between 2 cliffs. There, he meets the man responsible for handing over the assignment to him, Jasper. Jasper welcomes Levi happily, as he has spent an entire year in that place without seeing anyone, and it is finally time for him to end his mission and hand it over to Levi. Levi's task is to guard the western side of the canyon from the western watchtower. Levi asks about the tower on the other side, and Jasper informs him that another person, assigned by Russia, is stationed there to monitor the eastern side of the canyon. However, communication between them is strictly prohibited in any form. Jasper explains that the canyon is filled with landmines and equipped with an advanced security system that prevents anything from leaving it. He provides Levi with the necessary instructions for his duty, emphasizing that he must remain in the western tower to monitor and secure the canyon. Jasper then takes him to the tower, where Levi sees photos of military officers who were stationed there during World War II. Jasper continues explaining the mission, stating that along the canyon there are sensor devices designed to trigger an automatic alarm if any breach occurs. This alarm would activate all the bombs planted inside, resulting in the canyon's complete destruction. For this reason, Jasper stresses the importance of maintaining these sensors, warning that hearing the alarm means a massive explosion is imminent. Levi is puzzled by the extensive military preparations and weaponry surrounding the canyon. He asks Jasper if his mission is to prevent outsiders from entering the canyon. Jasper, however, clarifies that his true mission is to prevent what is inside the canyon from escaping to the outside world. Levi is shocked, unable to comprehend what Jasper is saying. Jasper explains that mysterious entities known as canyon creatures live inside. No one has been able to determine their nature, whether they are wild animals or extraterrestrial beings. He also reveals that in the late 1940s, the US military sent entire battalions into the canyon, with each battalion consisting of 2,400 soldiers. However, none of them ever returned, and their fate remains unknown to this day. As a result, the US military made an agreement with Russian forces to secure the canyon from both sides and prevent the creatures inside from escaping. Levi, however, finds this story more like a legend. It seems illogical and full of inconsistencies. He suspects that it is just a tale passed down by tower guards over generations. Nevertheless, he accepts the mission assigned to him. Afterward, Jasper bids Levi farewell and departs, relieved that his duty is finally over. Levi heads to the tower, prepares his meal, and eats alone. Later, he writes a poem in his notebook, while Jasper arrives at the rendezvous point where a helicopter will take him home. The helicopter descends and lowers a rope for him to climb aboard. He appears relieved, knowing he is close to returning home. But suddenly a gunshot is fired, striking Jasper. He falls from the helicopter and dies. A report is then sent to Bars confirming his elimination, revealing that Bars ensures all tower guards are executed once their missions end. So they can never reveal what they witnessed inside the canyon, keeping its secret buried forever. We then move to October, where Levi is in his tower performing his routine duties. Every 30 days, he leaves the tower to inspect the canyon's surveillance system and ensure the automated machine guns are functioning correctly. Once he finishes, he sends a radio message confirming that everything is stable. However, loneliness and emptiness were evident as he remained in the tower. While browsing the bookshelf, something written on the wall behind it caught his attention. He moved the shelf aside and discovered numerous writings left by previous guards who had occupied this tower over the years. He read one of the engraved phrases, attributed to a poet named Eliud, which said, "Those who take risks and cross boundaries are the only ones who discover their true strength." He discovered that this phrase had been written by a captain named Bradford in 1947. Looking at his photo, Levi then raised his binoculars to see the other side, and his gaze fell upon Doris, who was guarding the eastern tower. Any form of communication between them was strictly forbidden. That night, Levi woke up in terror, grabbed his rifle in a panic, but soon calmed down when he realized that the sound that had woken him was nothing but thunder. Looking through his binoculars, he saw Doris sitting on the other side of the tower, each of them spending their time alone. As November arrived, Doris sat alone, celebrating her birthday. She lit a candle and placed it on a piece of cake. Then, picking up her binoculars, she looked toward Levi, who was busy writing in his notebook. Wanting to catch his attention, she fired a shot into the air and then wrote on her board, "Today is my birthday." Levi saw her and smiled before responding by writing, "Happy birthday." From that moment on, the two began communicating through writing on boards. Doris asked Levi if he knew how to dance. He replied that he was good at only one thing, sniping. Doris challenged him to hit a target, and Levi, with precise aim, fired his rifle and struck the target. She clapped, impressed by his skill. But at that moment, they heard a strange sound coming from the ravine. Doris asked if he could see anything, so Levi looked through his binoculars and saw the ravine creatures attempting to climb. He quickly opened fire, triggering an explosion from one of the mines, while Doris simultaneously fired her machine gun to prevent them from scaling the walls. Suddenly, Doris noticed one of the creatures had reached her tower. She drew her pistol and shot it, sending it plummeting from the top. She suffered a minor wound but managed to treat it quickly. The next day, Levi descended to repair the mines and the defense system while Doris watched over him from her tower. As December arrived, things remained the same. each of them guarding the ravine from their posts, overshadowed by feelings of solitude. Through her binoculars, Doris noticed that Levi had made a small Christmas tree in an attempt to bring a festive spirit despite their isolation, and she felt grateful. The two continued communicating via their boards, as if spending time together despite the distance between them. By February, Levi once again woke up startled as always. That night, Doris sat crying while looking at a picture of her father. Levi noticed her through his binoculars and wrote on his board, "Are you okay?" She replied, "It's been a difficult day. I wish you were here with me so I wouldn't feel alone." Her words affected Levi, and he kept thinking about them. He looked at the wall and once again saw the phrase he had read earlier. Those who take risks and cross boundaries are the only ones who discover their true strength. At that moment, he made his decision. He tied one end of a rope to a projectile and launched it to the other side. Doris noticed what he was doing and quickly went down to secure the other end of a tree. Levi looked at her and then wrote on his board, "I've decided to have dinner with you tonight." Doris smiled joyfully, finally feeling as though she was breaking her loneliness. Levi prepared to cross, picked a flower, then fastened a pulley onto the rope and slid toward the other side. At last, he met Doris face to face and handed her the flower he had picked for her, making her feel deeply happy. They sat together in the tower, having dinner and talking about their lives and their experiences as guards. Levi was eager to understand the nature of the creatures inside the ravine, unlike Doris, who believed that some things were better left unknown. She told him that her father always used to say, "An excessive desire for truth only brings sorrow." Levi disagreed and replied, "On the contrary, sorrow comes from hiding the truth. Ever since I pulled the trigger for the first time, I haven't stopped seeing nightmares. That's why I retired 4 years ago. But I returned to this mission after realizing that I no longer had a reason to live safely." Doris understood what he meant. That night, she played a record, and the two of them danced together, feeling closer to each other than ever before. Levi then told her that he loved writing poetry and had written a poem for her, but he wouldn't let her read it now, only after their mission was over. As the sun rose, he bid her farewell and returned to his tower via the rope. But as he was crossing, he was suddenly shocked to see some of the creatures trying to climb the other side of the ravine. One of the mines exploded, cutting the rope, and Levi plummeted into the depths. Doris gasped in horror, frozen in shock, then quickly took action. She prepared her weapons, grabbed a rope, and parachuted down into the ravine to rescue him. She landed in a river and fought against the current until she managed to get out. Meanwhile, Levi was unconscious, hanging from a tree, as strange spider-like creatures slowly approached him. But at that moment, he regained consciousness and fired at the creature attacking him, causing him to fall from the tree onto the rocks below. During his fall, he felt something wrapping around him from below, as though a strange being had been encircling him with its fang-like appendages, restraining him, on the verge of devouring him. In that critical moment, he could do nothing to save himself. But suddenly Doris appeared and shot the creature, rescuing him. A wave of relief and happiness filled him, knowing that she had chosen to risk everything to save him. Together, they continued moving through the ravine, unaware of its true nature or what lay ahead. They decided to head toward the eastern wall of the ravine in an attempt to climb out. As they advanced, they were ambushed by ravine creatures riding horses, forcing them into an intense firefight as they tried to escape. In a fierce battle, they managed to eliminate the creatures using their weapons. Afterward, they checked on each other to ensure they were unharmed. At that moment, Doris realized that the rope she had brought to climb out had fallen into the river, and with the wall towering 500 meters high, they had no way to ascend. So they decided to follow the river south, hoping it would lead them out of the ravine. As they continued, Levi noticed that one of the creatures they had killed was wearing a military uniform. It was then that they both realized that these creatures were none other than the soldiers from the 3 battalions, 2,400 horse-riding troops who had entered the ravine but never returned, transforming into these monstrous beings. They continued their journey, still unaware of the true nature of this strange place or what had happened to the soldiers who had come before them and never left. Along their path, they passed through an area filled with tree trunks that eerily resembled skeletal remains. Eventually, they arrived at an abandoned church where they decided to seek refuge. Inside, they found the corpses of soldiers sitting on the pews, with bottles of cyanide poison beside them, indicating that they had chosen to end their lives rather than face their inevitable fate. As they moved forward, they finally reached the eastern wall, where they discovered a deserted fortress. Cautiously, they hurried inside, wary of what might be waiting for them, especially after seeing the scattered corpses of those who had been there before them, people who had also transformed into the ravine creatures. While searching the place, Levi finds a film reel labeled "May God Forgive Us." He places it in the projector to see what it contains. The film reveals an old recording of a female scientist from 1946, explaining that a secret alliance between the Allied nations was based in this trench during the war. The alliance was developing a biological and chemical weapon before the Nazis could invent the atomic bomb. However, disaster struck when an earthquake hit the region, causing the biological and chemical materials to leak and spread. The scientists were exposed, and their bodies began mutating into strange creatures due to the radiation and experiments conducted there. The scientist in the recording explains that the experiment spiraled out of control, turning the trench into a deadly hazard. Anyone who enters is exposed to radiation that transforms them into a trench creature. Realizing the danger, Levi tells Doris they must leave immediately before they too are transformed. Suddenly, Levi discovers a modern computer in the room. He turns it on and finds alarming information. The US military is still studying this experiment, aiming to develop and control it to create super soldiers. At that moment, they understand the depth of the conspiracy. The military has been guarding the trench not to destroy it, but to preserve and exploit the experiment. As Levi continues searching the computer's files, he discovers that sensors placed throughout the trench are programmed to send a signal to the bombs planted inside, triggering a massive explosion if the sensors are destroyed or deactivated. He deduces that if an explosion occurs, they must escape at least 4 kilometers from the trench to reach the nearest safe zone. As they prepare to leave, weapons in hand, Doris suddenly falls into a trap. A rope tightens around her legs, dragging her violently across the ground. A trench creature riding a horse pulls her away until she collides with a solid object and loses consciousness. Levi immediately chases after her, determined to save her. Doris regains consciousness to find herself hanging in the place where the creature took her. She struggles against it, kicking and breaking free before engaging in a fierce fight. However, the creature is far stronger. She attempts to stab it with a burning wooden stick, but fails to kill it. At a critical moment, Levi appears suddenly and shoots the creature, rescuing her. As he checks on her, he notices a name engraved on the creature's armor. It bore the title Captain, linking it to one of the soldiers who guarded the tower in 1947. It turns out to be the same person who wrote the poetic inscription on the wall. Levi then takes Doris with him to a nearby storage facility, where they decide to take a jeep and drive toward the eastern wall. There, they tie the rope Levi had previously used before it broke. Just then, trench creatures appear behind them. Doris opens fire until her ammunition runs out, after which Levi takes over, trying to keep the creatures away from the vehicle. But his ammo also depletes. As Doris starts the car, one of the creatures grabs onto the dangling rope beneath the jeep, attempting to climb aboard. Levi draws his sword and attacks, while Doris fights them off with her axe. Together, they battle fiercely, knocking the creatures off the vehicle as it ascends slowly. Levi nearly falls but manages to hold on and climb back up. He then ignites a torch and throws it at the creatures, setting them ablaze as they climb the rope. Finally, Levi and Doris cut the rope and finished climbing out of the trench, returning to the tower to tend to their wounds. They are unsure whether the radiation they were exposed to will affect them, but they know that if 5 days pass without symptoms, they will be safe. Levi confesses to Doris that he now understands why he was chosen for this mission. He was a loner, with no one to ask about him if he disappeared. But he admits that after meeting her, he no longer feels that way. He has found a reason to stay alive. Doris suggests they escape together to France, where they can live safely. Levi agrees, but insists on waiting 5 days to ensure they are unaffected before destroying the trench and ending the horrific experiment. Before parting, he tells her he loves her, then descends the rope and returns to the tower, where he contacts Bars via radio. She asks if he abandoned his post and went down into the trench, as they received a signal indicating someone was in the lower lab. Levi denies it, leading Bars to conclude that the soldier in the eastern tower must have entered. She orders Levi to eliminate her. Levi pretends to comply, but after ending the call, Bars orders her team to head to the site and eliminate both Levi and Doris. They have become a threat to the experiment and must be replaced. Meanwhile, Levi and Doris communicate through writing on boards until they hear the sound of an approaching helicopter. Realizing Bars is coming to kill them, Levi warns Doris to run immediately. At the same time, Bars disembarks with her combat team and heads toward the western tower, but Levi is nowhere to be found. She realizes the other soldier has also escaped and orders drones to track them down. Drones are deployed into the forest, forcing Levi and Doris to flee in different directions. They must reach the 4-kilometer mark from the trench, where Levi plans to destroy the sensors, causing a massive explosion. However, the drones fire at them. Levi dodges the attacks, shooting back and destroying some drones. Meanwhile, Doris takes cover from the bullets and fires at the drones with her rifle, taking them down before continuing her escape. Upon reaching the required distance, they aim their weapons at the sensors along the trench and begin destroying them one by one. When alarms sound in the tower, Bars realizes she has only 1 minute before the explosion. She and her unit rush to their helicopter, while Levi and Doris flee as fast as possible. Bars orders the pilot to ascend quickly, but the explosion engulfs everything in the trench and damages her aircraft before she can escape. At the same time, Levi runs for his life, only to be swept away by the blast wave and thrown off a towering waterfall. Doris watches the explosion behind her, realizing that Levi has perished. She spends the next 5 days alone, anxiously awaiting any radiation symptoms. When none appear, she confirms she is unharmed. During this time, she finds a letter in her clothes. Levi had placed it there without her noticing. The envelope reads, "If I do not return to you after 5 days as we agreed, open this letter and read it at sunset." On the 5th day, at sunset, Doris opens the letter and finds the poem Levi had written for her. She is deeply moved. By April, Doris is seen working at a restaurant, living a quiet, simple and safe life. Suddenly, she is shocked to see Levi sitting at one of the tables, writing on a napkin. "I've decided to have dinner with you tonight." Overwhelmed with joy, Doris realizes he survived the explosion. She scolds him for taking so long, and he explains that he was injured and had to ensure he wasn't being tracked. She offers him a job at the restaurant on the condition that he writes her a new poem. They smile at each other, filled with happiness, and the film ends.